So, my father has always doted on my mother. He worked so hard so that she wouldn't have to and could stay home and raise the kids. Except my mother was a firm believer in what she called personal responsibility. In her words, I didn't wear those clothes, so why should I have to wash them? That was to me when I was 9. And by the time I was 12, I was doing the dishes, washing my own clothes, taking care of the dogs, emptying and cleaning the cat box, preparing my own meals, and a plethora of other chores on the family farm. All of us kids were in the same boat. My dad was always gone working hard to make sure that we had a good life, while my mother was always watching Maury Povich, Law & Order, various court shows, and taking naps, while us kids did all of the chores and basically raised ourselves. She ultimately became incredibly spoiled and, quite frankly, completely out of touch with reality. As it does, time moved forward and all of us kids moved away, got married and had kids of our own. I specifically moved to Europe over 3,500 miles away. The family farm suffered a bad fire and was passed into other hands, and my folks moved into town. My dad still working hard, while my mother still stayed home so she could watch Maury, Judge Judy and other trash TV. Ever the same and unchanging. That is, until about a month ago. My dad started to feel a lot of pain in his neck, so bad that he couldn't walk or really move. The doctors started a whole battery of tests, and after a month, they discovered that he has leukemia that has spread to his spine, resulting in stage 4 bone cancer. The doctors believe that it's a non-aggressive form of the disease, however, it is too advanced to ever be cured, so they're trying to force it into remission through chemotherapy and immunotherapy. I called to see how they were doing, and my mother basically took over the call. This was her reaction to my father finding out that he has a disease that will ultimately kill him one day, likely sooner rather than later. She was worried about how this would affect their finances and, as such, her trips to the casino. Not how they're going to pay the medical bills or maybe even the mortgage. She was worried about the casino. He was in an appointment for part of his cancer treatment, and she was annoyed because she had no idea if he was rescheduling his chemo for October so she could go on her cruise. In her words, like he was supposed to be doing. She bought a new living room set a few months ago, and my dad, in his immense amount of pain, finds it to be extraordinarily uncomfortable. He finds himself in more pain every time he sits down on the new couch. However, his old recliner he finds very comfortable. So naturally, my mother moved it out to the garage and tells him that if he wants to be comfortable and sit in the chair, he can go out and sit in the garage. And no, the garage is not set up for comfortable human use. It's used for tools, storage, and her car that he paid for because she hasn't worked in decades. So, my dad is not allowed to bring his chair, the only one that he finds comfortable, into the house that he's paying for so that he can be comfortable because my mother doesn't find the chair aesthetically pleasing. Instead, according to my mother, he can go out in the garage and sit surrounded by junk with nothing to do but chain smoke because she doesn't want that ruddy old chair in her house. And speaking of smoking, the man is dying of cancer and is trying to quit smoking because of it, so what does my mother do? Well, I bought him the lights this time. Okay, great mum. Now he can go in the garage and chain smoke the light cigarettes because there's nothing else to do out there. And when I suggested that she at least clean up the garage and set him up a place that would allow him to watch his football and be comfortable, her only response was, why would I do that? And then proceeded to complain about how much cleaning she has to do now that he's on chemo and is therefore immunocompromised. So where do I start? This event happened only hours ago. I was riding on the bus to return home from work. It's a fairly half-hour ride, and most of the time I'm on my phone, listening to some music while scrolling through Reddit or playing games. Today I decided to just listen to music and have a snack. I always carry croissants in my bag with strawberry jelly and butter. No more than 2 minutes after I got my croissant out of my bag, I feel a tap on the back of my shoulder. I turn around and who do I see? The Mad Titan Karen and her little spawn. The conversation went something like this. I said, yes. The entitled mum says, excuse me, young man, but do you think my son can have that? And points at my croissant. He hasn't eaten anything all day and I've been too busy to get him some food. I say to her, sorry, but this is the only one I got, and the entitled mum cuts me off and says, don't make it such a big deal. It's only a dumb croissant. I'm sure you have more in your bag. I can see from here that it's full with stuff. I say back to her, maybe I do, maybe I don't. Either way, it's not really your business. Now please leave me alone. The entitled kid then goes, Mummy, you said that I can have a croissant. And she says, yes, honey, but this mean person won't give you a croissant. Turns on me and says, see, you're making my baby sad. Give him the croissant now. I tell her, no, I'm not going to give your kid my snack, and don't blame this on me. It's your bad parenting that you should be blaming. Teaching your child to take food from strangers? Who in their right mind does that? The entitled mum says back, "How dare you talk to me like that? You know I'm old enough to be your mother. Now give me that." The entitled mum then tries to grab either my croissant or my bag off my hands. She probably thought I had more in it, which I didn't. But with that act in place, I pushed the entitled mum away from me and she fell on the bus floor. She then started yelling that I assaulted her and that she's gonna sue me. The bus stops and the driver hopped off his seat and stormed on our way. And you could tell that he was not happy. The bus driver comes over and says, "What the hell is going on?" The entitled mum says, "He assaulted me. Please call the police. This man is crazy." I say, "You assaulted me first and I just defended myself." And he says, "Yeah, cut the crap. I saw you from the camera, as bus drivers in my country have installed security cameras so that they can see what's going on in their bus from a little monitor at the driving seat." The entitled mum says, but, and the bus driver responds, "Get off my bus before I call the cops on you." The entitled mum grabbed her kid, who is now crying and throwing a tantrum, and left the bus. The bus driver asked if I'm okay, and I told him yes, and he made a joke of how crazy that woman was to me and laughed. What a nice guy. My friends and I bought tickets to a concert featuring a lot of cool artists. We couldn't believe it was only $35. Mind you, that the main artist is a former child star from Disney, and the concert was full of young teens, and a lot of them were with their parents. Kind of lame, we thought, but okay. We were determined to enjoy the concert. Fast forward after all the opening acts were over, the child star comes out and it's actually quite exciting. She sings pop songs, big surprise, and a lot of them are big hits. We are having fun and dancing and letting our inner teen out, and it was a great time. Then comes the entitled mum. She taps me on the shoulder and asks me to stop dancing all over her son. Mind you, that this kid was a 12-year-old that had obviously not stepped a single toe into puberty yet. He just seemed confused. I was in a foreign country and English is my second language. I couldn't even think what to say, so I just said, "Sorry, I didn't see him." I told my friend what happened then and there, and she was super protective, so she grabbed me and put me on the other side of her. Now, she's next to the entitled mum's kid. We carried on like nothing had happened and kept on dancing. Mind you, we weren't swinging our arms profusely or twerking or anything that could either hit people around us or be considered inappropriate for a children's concert. The entitled mum though started complaining at my friend, this time being passive aggressive and rude to her son. She was so effing bothered that we were having a good time that she was taking it out on the poor kid. She kept saying, "Careful not to let them touch you," super loud, almost in our ears, all while grabbing him aggressively to move him a bit. She finally confronted us again, but this time she was talking to my friend. Now, my friend's English was way better than mine, and she is not a people pleaser like me. She went on to say that we weren't touching the entitled mum's son, and we weren't doing anything wrong. The entitled mum asked us to move, and my friend said that we weren't moving. The entitled mum proceeded to say, "If you don't move, I'll knock you over." My friend and I went to find security because at this point, the entitled mum threatened us and wasn't leaving us alone. We walked the security guard to the entitled mum and her kid, and she talked to him. We couldn't hear anything because, well, it was a concert and it was loud AF, which makes the whole confrontation from earlier even more cringy. And then the security guard asked my friend and I to move. When I looked at the entitled mum, she had a gross smirk on her face. That was the end of it. It wasn't a happy ending with the entitled mum getting what she deserved, but I'm sure that she will if she keeps up with that attitude. My grandma is an interesting individual. One may place her in the Karen category. She's from a small town where you're either very well off and waspy, or you smoke and live in an old school made into an apartment building. She is on the waspy side, knows everything and everyone, and always will find something about you to nitpick at. Fun times. The best time of all was in 8th grade. She was a math teacher in my school for junior year, and oh boy, was that a dandy time. Because I was her granddaughter, that made a huge target on my back. Every day she would watch me like a hawk and wait for the split second that I would look away and then shout, "Granddaughter, pay attention and don't make me tell your mother that you're goofing off in my class." And as you can imagine, the whole class would giggle. She would grin and her ego would inflate like swim shorts when you first walk into the water. One time I accidentally wore slippers to school, and for the rest of the year she would bring it up like, "Can you not remember the equation like you couldn't remember your shoes?" Cue malicious grins and even more laughter. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when I got a boyfriend. So for a bit of backstory here, I was held back in kindergarten, so I'm a year older than everyone in my 8th grade class. I was dating a boy in 10th grade, but he skipped ahead a grade, so he's actually a year younger than his 10th grade class. That made our age difference to be only about a year apart. However, from an outside perspective, when you first hear a 10th grade boy is dating an 8th grade girl, I'm sure your first reaction would be an ew. And boy, did my grandma eat that up like it was her very last meal. Anytime we would visit, she would make side comments like, "We know that granddaughter prefers older men, right granddaughter?" Or, "If it was my child, I certainly wouldn't approve, but I guess times are a little different." It was annoying, but it wasn't interfering with my life. That is, until she started to gossip about me to other teachers. She would tell them that I was sneaking around with an older boy. I was probably experimenting with things not meant for my age. That I was going into teachers' lounges and bathrooms with him, and she also heavily implied that my parents were against all this. For context, my parents know how old we both were and actually aren't crazy. My boyfriend was the quietest and nerdiest kid in his grade. It took us both 2 weeks of holding hands before we even kissed. So none of this was true, but that didn't stop the rumors. During lunch, I'd get asked by girls if it was true that I'd done certain things, and if I was in class and I would ask my teacher to use the restroom, they would refuse. And if they did let me go, they would interrogate me for several minutes first to make sure I wasn't sneaking off to be with my older boyfriend. Before any of this, I was literally a fly on the wall and I was completely fine with that. Now I was miserable and felt completely helpless. After coming home crying for who knows how many days in a row, my mum got fed up. I remember her screaming, "That's it," grabbing her keys and storming out the door. When she returned, she said that grandma wouldn't be bothering me anymore, and once I got older, she told me a brief summary of what happened. Basically, my mum arrived and approached her calmly, explaining to her that I was a child and she has control of the situation. She even explained the age difference, and after asking her to back off and stop telling lies to her co-workers, being my teachers, grandma scoffed and said, "You don't know what she could be doing behind closed doors. I'm just keeping an eye out for her." And this set my mum off. She told me that she started yelling at my grandma about shaming her own granddaughter and how miserable I was. She said that she has no right to say or do any of this, and what she was doing was cruel and inappropriate. And my grandma's response? "How dare you enter my home and accuse me of this? Get out of my house." So, my mum left. And the next day, my grandma completely avoided eye contact with me. She didn't even try and call on me for answers or point out what kind of clothes I was wearing. She just averted her gaze and did her job. Finally. Rumors continued just for a little bit, but then people caught on that it really wasn't as scandalous as the rumors portrayed, and we were left alone. How did all of this end? Well, like you'd expect. Grandma acts like it never happened, never brings it up, and avoids the conversation if it's about the time that she taught me. It's irritating, but at the same time, it's expected. Now that I'm an adult and we're all aware of her silly ways, we can just smile and nod until we go home, where we can then rant about how mean she was during dinner. I had a discussion with my dad, and I live in my own apartment, so sometimes I visit them from time to time. Anyway, one day during a visit, my dad was telling me about personal responsibilities. My dad was angry at me for being selfish. Basically, I live in an apartment with my sister. I do my own cooking, buy my own groceries, and clean the dishes daily. Also, I make sure my room is clean. My sister is more chaotic. I love her, but it's her personality. I do not boss her around, and if she wants something, I will do it. She doesn't clean dishes, but she uses clean dishes. Sometimes, there are no clean spoons at all. There's like 20 used spoons going around. I told her once as a reminder to clean the dishes. I never bagged, I only asked once, and I took one plate and one spoon in my room that I clean daily. My sister also wanted me to wake her up for alarms. I usually wake up at 5 AM and I drive to work at 6:30 AM, and my sister goes to work at 9 AM, and sometimes she asks me to borrow my car. I told her I'm okay with it as long as she pays for gas. Anyway, my sister was pissed and says how selfish I was for not cleaning her dishes and giving her my car when I need it for business and work-related trips. If she wanted to, she could afford to pay for an Uber. When I visited my family, my dad drove his car and he was talking to me about responsibilities. He told me that I shouldn't be selfish, and I told him that I have work, I have friends, I clean my own dishes, and I asked him why she can't clean her own dishes. He said to me, "Don't blame others," and I replied that he was blaming me. I also said, "Well, what about when you are in the house? Don't you tell us to clean our own dishes? Why don't you have the responsibilities?" He was angry and threatened to throw me out of the car. I said, "You threatened to throw me out because I disagree with you? I don't owe her anything. It's her dishes and she can do her own dishes." My dad was like, "You will never learn responsibilities." My mum's response was, "Your sister is busy." I was angry because I work from 7 AM till 6 PM, and I also work unpaid extra hours because I care about my job. I barely have free time, and my sister works from 10 AM to 3 PM. I replied to my mother, "And what, you think I have nothing to do?" I then screamed at both my mum and dad, "I am not a maid for her. I love my sister, and my sister was just frustrated at herself because she realized her mess can get out of hand." After that discussion, she began to use plastic plates. My parents never tried to tell me how to behave again. I graduated high school back in 2010, so I'll try to remember the best I can. I live in Texas, but lived across the border to Mexico because, to be honest, it's way cheaper to live over there when you're making money in the US. My high school graduation was in the middle of June, which is the hottest days of the year. Imagine having to dress nicely for graduation to be done in the middle of a football field on a scorching summer day. I had told my mum about this and she still wanted to bring my now 4-year-old little brother to the graduation. Since I was busy with all of this, I told her to invite our family to this, meaning my uncles, aunts, and especially my grandparents. She said that she did, but since I was busy with the whole graduation and enrolling into colleges, I believed her. The day comes and she hadn't told a soul about my graduation. She just told me that everyone was busy and to deal with it later. Since graduation was going to start in a few minutes, I just had to suck it up. It turns out that she didn't tell anyone because she deemed this to be our family matter. After almost 3 hours in the heat, the graduation ended and my mother was nowhere to be seen. My friends were inviting me to their graduation parties and I wanted to get my mum's permission for this, so I called her. I say to her, "Hey mum, where are you?" And she says, "Oh, I went to go get the car early so we could avoid traffic." I'm here thinking that this is perfect, so I can tell her that I'll go hang out with my friends at a graduation party so she can go back. Her response is, "No, you can't. We need to get back home since they are saying that there's people fighting each other and it can get ugly and we need to get home and be safe." I told my friends about this and sadly, I did not go to any graduation parties. When I got in the car, I noticed that there's Chick-fil-A in there and I'm confused as to why that's there since we didn't get any on the way to my graduation. My entitled mum says to me, "Your brother was getting fussy because of the heat and he got hungry, so I took him to Chick-fil-A." I was mad, but maybe she went after they called my name since they were going in alphabetical order and I was one of the first ones they called, and that way she could get a picture of me being handed my diploma, and then she said something that to this day I hate for it. My entitled mum says, "We left 20 minutes after it started." And I say, "WTF, did you at least bring me anything to eat?" And she says, "No, here's some leftover chicken tenders from your brother." I assumed that she was going to take me to a nice restaurant and I would meet my other family there. Nope, we went straight home and I didn't even get dinner. I felt so ashamed and unappreciated that I just went to my room and closed my door, turned off the lights and cried myself to sleep. Yeah, I don't hate to admit it, I was an 18-year-old male that cried himself to sleep because his entitled mum made him feel like his life was not worth anything in her book or anyone else in particular. For the record, my dad used to work in Ohio at that time of year, and unfortunately, that is also the busiest and he couldn't come to my graduation. When I told him what my mum did, he was upset so much that they were nearly to the point of divorce, but luckily they didn't. My dad is very level-headed, unlike my mum.
My significant other and I were renting a ground floor unit at a really nice apartment complex. I wouldn't say it was a luxury apartment or anything, but our ground floor unit had a little patio out the back that led into a really nice courtyard area with hammocks, a walking path, outdoor fireplace and seating area, etc. A lot of people walk their dogs out there or let their kids play out in the grass, including us. We have a 1-year-old cane corso. We got her when we'd been living in the unit for about 2.5 months and she was only 8 weeks old at the time. She's a really good dog and we've trained her well. We could let her out to go potty and she'd come right back, even if there were distractions, people or dogs out there. We always stood on the patio and watched her anyways because our pet agreement said that we couldn't leave our dog unattended. Then we'd go pick up her poop right away if she pooped, which is also part of the pet agreement, as I'm sure is standard at most apartment complexes. We kept a small step trash can outside specifically for her poop bags because we didn't want to throw them away inside, and the only outdoor trash cans were on the other side of the building, which I agree is super dumb. It was a really small trash can, like the kind you tuck into the bathroom between the toilet and the wall. We also had our poop bags hanging on our patio door handle for easy access so we didn't have to hunt for them every time we needed them. The entitled mum and the entitled kid moved in on the ground floor of our building 2 units down from us. No biggie. We ran into her one day carrying in groceries and my significant other held open the door for her. She seemed kind of Karenish but was polite, and her kid, who was probably 10 or 11 years old, didn't even look up from his phone. Whatever, that's pretty typical of kids these days. They also had a dog. A little black and white fluffy thing, super cute but not trained very well. Didn't know what kind of dog it was, but it was much smaller than our already giant puppy. After about 2 weeks or so, we realized that there were dog turds in the grass right off of our patio. We found out the hard way because my boyfriend stepped in it the first time. Luckily, he wasn't barefoot. They were clearly not our dog's turds, as 1, we always picked up her poop right after she went, and 2, they were obviously from a small dog, not our 70-pound puppy. We'd been in the apartment about 7 or 8 months at that point, and we'd never had an issue with this, so we figured that it was the entitled mum's little dog. I wrote her a polite note that basically was like, "Hey neighbor, we noticed that some of your dog's poops aren't being picked up and are right off our patio. per the pet agreement that we all have to sign, we all need to be picking up our own dog's poop each time they go. I'm sure it was an accident and you just didn't notice, so if you could just make sure to do that going forward, we'd appreciate it. Signed, your neighbours a few units down. She wasn't home, so I slipped it under the door and went back to my apartment. A couple of hours later, the entitled mum is banging on my door and gets really angry with me, insisting that it couldn't have been her dog and how dare I assume. I felt really bad and apologized immediately. I said that I didn't mean to offend her and it must have been someone else. She told me never to bother her with crap like this again and stormed off. I was like, okay. And not 3 days later, I was sitting on my patio with a book, enjoying the cool weather, when I see their little dog run out of their back door, no one with it, and it comes over to me. I said hello to the pup because I love puppies, and then it took a crap right in front of the patio, ran back home, and scratched on the door to be let back inside. I saw the entitled kid slide the door open enough to let the dog in, then close it again without coming outside to pick up the poop. I was annoyed here because I saw it with my own eyes that it was their dog and no one was even watching it when it was outside. So I grabbed a poop bag, picked up the poop, and wrote another less polite note about the entitled mum's kid neglecting to watch the dog or come to check if it had pooped and pick up after it. I dropped the poop bag and their note on the patio right by the door, then went back to my reading. The entitled mum was quicker to come by this time and stomped right up to me, waving the note around, then stated that her kid was just a kid and probably just forgot to check. I said that I didn't care and that her kid was old enough to stand outside for 3 minutes and come and pick up the dog's poop. She said that there's no poop bags or trash cans on this side of the building and that she didn't feel comfortable making her kid walk all the way around the building for that. The next part is my own fault in hindsight. I suggested that she put a trash can like mine on her patio and leave their own poop bags handy like we do for our dog. She eyed our stuff, huffed some more, rolled her eyes, refused to do anything about the poop, and walked off. At this point, I was super annoyed. I stalked my patio door for the next couple of days as much as I could, just waiting. And sure enough, of day 2, in the evening when I was about to give up, I see the puppy run outside towards my patio. I whipped out my phone, took some pictures of the dog outside alone, which is not allowed, and pictures of the dog pooping, and then took another photo an hour later of the poop still there, and the timestamps of all of them. Then, I sent an email to the apartment office people who were always pretty nice, and they responded quickly that they would give the entitled mum a warning about it. And sure enough, the entitled mum comes back again to get mad at me and yell at me about how petty I was to report them to the office, and now they had a $150 fine for not picking up their dog poop. It's worth noting that these fines were rare. Poop prints were not used at this complex, and in order for the office to fine someone for dog poop, they had to have proof that it was a specific tenant's dog poop and that it wasn't picked up, hence the photos I'd taken and the timestamps. I told her that I'd tried to be nice about it with her twice before, and it was her own fault at that point for not abiding by the terms of the pet agreement that we all had to sign, or everyone who had a dog at least. She went off about how she's a single mum and she works during the day and her precious baby can't be expected to pick up after their dog. I told her that a 10 or 11-year-old was plenty old enough to pick up after a dog and that if they weren't responsible enough, then maybe the kid shouldn't be letting the dog out at all and she should be the one to do it, and maybe whoever is home with him should be looking after it. She got angry, told me that I had no idea how to be a single mum, and that her mum stays with him during the day and shouldn't be expected to look after her kid and her dog, and she stomped off again. I expected to hear more about it, but didn't. The ironic part is, I am a single mum. My kid isn't my significant other's, and I raised him alone for 2.5 years before I met my significant other. So yes, I do know how hard it is, and I live 1,000 miles away from my closest family member, so I never even had the luxury of being able to have my mum watch my kids. Over the next couple of weeks, we didn't find any more dog turds on our patio. We did notice our poop bags were depleting and our trash can filling up way more quickly than usual. I had my suspicions and wanted to test it. We had recently bought some small security cameras for inside our apartment for different reasons, and I had my boyfriend set one up outside on the patio. We faced it where I could see our door and trash can, but didn't point to the rest of the courtyard or other people's units. As yeah, we respect privacy around here. Sure enough, the same evening my boyfriend set it up, I see the entitled kid walk onto our patio, take a poop bag, walk out of frame, then come back in to throw it in our trash can. Okay, now I'm pissed, but also not trying to fight this lady or her kid. So, I moved the poop bags to the inside door handle. It's a glass door so you can still see them, but we always lock our sliding door. Next morning, I hear someone knocking on the back patio door and I go to see the entitled kid standing there looking annoyed. I didn't open the door, I just spoke loudly enough to ask what did he need. He demanded a poop bag for his dog's poop. I said I'm sorry, but these are our poop bags for our dog and they weren't free for anyone else to use. Also, the apartment provides poop bags in a dispenser near the trash can on the other side of the building. The kid started demanding a poop bag, saying his mum told him he could use ours, slapping his hand on the glass a few times, trying to scare me maybe. cause yes, I'm so terrified of a 10-year-old boy and finally screaming at me that he's telling his mother on me. I said to him, fine, go ahead, I'll tell her the same thing. And sure enough, a few minutes later, the entitled mum is standing on my patio also demanding a poop bag for her dog's poop. I denied her a bag and asked her to please step off my patio as she was making me feel unsafe and uncomfortable, as my significant other wasn't home at the time. She told me that I was a bratty child, I'm 24 by the way, and she demanded that I let her use my poop bags as I'd already told her that she could before. I said no, I told you to get some yourself and do what I do. Keep them close by and put your own trash can on your patio. Not use the bags that I buy with my own money for my own dog and then fill up my tiny trash can with your dog's poop. I pointed out that she could use a plastic shopping bag if she didn't want to buy her own poop bags, or she could use the bags the complex provided on the other side of the building. She kept going off on me, and I finally told her that if she didn't leave my patio, I'd call the police as she was harassing me. The apartment office was closed on Sundays, and of course, it was a Sunday. She acted like she was going to call my bluff, but then my boyfriend got home and walked up behind me to ask what was going on, and she ended up dragging her kid away, again, leaving the poop in the grass off my patio. So, once she was gone, I took another time-stamped picture of the dog poop, downloaded the footage from my security camera of her kids stealing my poop bags and throwing them in the trash can, and the footage from that morning of them yelling at me and demanding my bags and me denying them. And I emailed all of it to the apartment management. I told them that she made me feel unsafe and uncomfortable in my own home, and that she and her child felt entitled to come on my patio and take my belongings. I also went outside, picked up her dog's poop, looked in the trash can on my patio, and pulled out the bags with her dog's poop. They were significantly smaller than my dog's poops, as I'm sure any dog owner could tell the difference in poops of a 12-pound dog versus a 70-pound dog. I went and opened all the bags and dumped the poop straight on her patio right outside the door. On Monday, I heard back from the office lady who said she would take care of it. By Friday, there was a moving truck and the entitled mum and the entitled kid were moving out. I'm pretty sure they were evicted. After talking to some of our other, much friendlier neighbours, it turns out we weren't the only ones who had been complaining about her. They'd only lived in the complex for like 2 or 3 months before they'd made so many enemies that they were kicked out. Sometimes I think I should feel bad for playing a part in them getting evicted, but honestly, I can't bring myself to feel guilty about it. It's not my fault that she was a lazy entitled mum who couldn't even be bothered to get a shopping bag to pick up her dog's crap. I never heard from her about the turds that I dropped on her patio, but I like to think she stepped in them without looking and knew better than to come and complain to me about it. Also, I'm sure they were given more than a week to vacate, as those are the tenancy laws here, but she packed up and left like a bat out of hell. I guess she didn't want to stay somewhere that she was clearly seen as an enemy. After the last time I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more wary that if she did try, it'd end very badly for her. So she mostly just yelled at me and didn't lay a finger on me again until the events of wanting my house some years later. I thought nothing of it and just continued with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was right around the corner, and my dad presented me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town in. He said that I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter and that this would do in the meantime. I ended up agreeing with his logic and kept saving for a car. A few days later though, I found a pamphlet for a military school while sweeping grass off the back patio and mowing the lawn. It was on the ground and under a chair near where my mum liked to sit and drink wine. I had a bad feeling that she was cooking up some kind of crazy scheme, so I waited until my dad got home to show him what I'd found. He was pretty mad but didn't jump to conclusions. So, he went to see my mum with a pamphlet and asked her about it, and said, "Honey, what is this?" And my mum goes white at the sight of the pamphlet and says, "It's nothing. I've never seen it before." My dad says, "Really? Because if you were planning on trying to send Craggle to military school, you know I wouldn't allow it." That's when my mum broke her facade and yelled, "He needs to learn some discipline. He locks his door all the time and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat." My dad responds by saying, "Craggle did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you and the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing things from her brother. As far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Craggle to military school is over. And if you try to send him, then so help me, I'll bring the hammer down in any way I can." My mum responded saying, "Well, I guess this whole family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing." So my dad says, "Stop being so dramatic that Craggle is growing up to be his own man now with his own money." My mum then just stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited for her to leave for work and dug out what she was trying to hide. It was an application for military school entirely filled out in her handwriting. It required the signatures of both parents or legal guardians on it. And there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized my mum's, but the other looked like a pitiful attempt at trying to replicate my dad's. He prided himself on his smooth and complex signature, and there's no way that my mum could copy it without looking like a fraud. I guess she realized that after she was confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the papers and showed them to my dad later. He was mad, but figured she'd done that already and let it go. But he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few months later, it got out that my mum was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend of hers from high school. This was the last straw for my dad, and he filed for divorce. I went to live with him months later after he bought another house. He sped up the divorce pretty quickly by pulling out the military school papers that my mum had forged his signature on, and it wasn't just that. He also had evidence that she forged his signature on at least 1 credit card application and one other thing that I don't recall. That made my mum fear being arrested for fraud, and they went through court pretty fast because she agreed to most of his terms. Mum got the house though because dad didn't want it, but she also demanded alimony and child support because my sister unsurprisingly chose to stay living with her. The judge awarded my mum the child support and a minimum amount of alimony for a decade of monthly payments. The alimony just basically covered my sister's allowance anyway. Mum was pretty mad about that and threatened to take him back to court, but he held all those forged signatures over her head for years to make her back down. On the day I left to live in my dad's new house, my sister stuck her tongue out at me and smugly said, "Mummy told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling, and that she was the reason why I was leaving the house." I just shook my head and told her to think what she wants because I didn't care anymore. Then walked out the front door, finally feeling as free as a bird. My relationship with my sister when she came to visit dad's house once a week only got worse after that, until finally we stopped talking altogether for years. I didn't really care to visit my mum's house after I moved out, and she'd pretty much gutted my old room for a home office anyway.